This is a description of my solution for assignment 4. Hopefully you did well on your own, but I'll show you how I solved the problem, and you can compare. So, as I mentioned, there are 3 divs in this area, and I had to get them formatted properly. So let's go ahead and look at some of the CSS code. First, this is the form itself. This is the actual PHP. Just to see the divisions I have here, I have one called Featured House, and that one I did with an image. I hardwired that image in. I also hardwired in the description. I didn't read that from a file or anything. I put an inline style here to get the home to be blue, to show up featured home as blue, and I made it a heading 2, an H2. Now I have a realtor list. Now within the realtor list, I called a function called display realtors. Our realtors has a H4, again in blue. So another division called find home, which is the little form that we have to call assignment for home list, so we can see the homes that are listed, either from the ones that they search for specifically or all of them in a list. Now I had another div at the bottom called end page. This is to give a little space after the divisions and also to place that link to go to assignment for guest calculator, where we see the guest book and the mortgage calculator. That used to be our home page. So you're going to take that and rename it something like this. So that gives us the basic structure of the home page. But let's look at the CSS file. Now I added down at the bottom these extra divs. So here's the featured house, 100 from the top, left, width is about 350, and the height was about 470. Now, let's go all the way down to the find home form. To figure out where to place that, I added to the height here. I had to go top. I had to start with 100 and make that 570, add it to the height. And so I started at the top 600 pixels down. And that gave me an approximate idea, so I knew that it would line up below very nicely. I made the widths the same, and I made the left parameters the same, so it would line up and block very well. Also, in the realtor list, I had to look at this division with a featured house and see how far it was from the left. So I have 10 pixels plus 360 of the width, and I had to be at least more than that over. So I chose to go about 400 pixels over to the right. That's from the left. And I dealt with the height and the width as I needed to fit in the pictures gracefully. So that's the basic cascading style sheets that I added. I did add something here called end page as well, where I put this down below all the other forms. So 800 pixels down from the top, so the link would appear below everything. All right, in the home list, this is something you've seen before. You get the city, and I set the cities to be all, find city to be all. And here I made a decision. If it's all, I just put out the heading current listings. Otherwise, I put out current listings that match whatever the user entered into the find city. We get the root. You've seen this many times. Now these are house image files at this point because we're going to show a list of homes. So as I'm going through the files, I'm going to display property info. And here I pass the image file name and the city. So you've seen this kind of thing in an earlier presentation where I go through the images file, I change the JPEG to text after displaying the image, and then I read the file for the houses index directory. I read that to get the text version of the description of the house. Now, I had to set a few flags up here, and you'll see why in a moment. I have the show house, which I had before in an exercise. I have a description flag set to no to start, and a description of an empty description, because that's why I'm going to want to build that up in concatenation. So I have to start with something, even if that something is just an empty string. Now, let's go down. We read through the file, and as you may recall before, I check to see if it's not all, and then I go through this, and if it's not all, I'm going to look to see if I've got a match on the city. If what the user entered matches what's in the city, if it's contained within, then it's okay. Otherwise, I want to set the show house flag to no or N, so I won't do it. Now, as I reach each line of the file, I'm looking for the way I encoded the file: price, bedrooms, baths, footage, realtor. Let's take a quick look at an example file. Here it is. city, price, bedrooms, baths, footage, so forth. So I'm using this to kind of find out where I need to substring out and get the information I need. And here's the thing I call grabber, the big headline at the beginning of each file. Now the description was a little bit different. I have the description word here, but instead of writing right after that, I have it all be on separate lines from then on. So your program has to know that when you get to description, you just read every line after that, and that's all part of the description. So let's go back to how I handled that. So I'm getting realtors into realtor and grabber into grabber, and then I get down to description. So once I find description, instead of getting anything with the substring function, I just set a flag that says the description flag is now Y. We've hit it. So if it is Y, I start taking the line plus a break and concatenating it with the dot equals into the description field. And it's okay. I wanted to bring through the line that said description colon, so I get that as well. And it'll keep doing that all the way up. Let's go back to the top of the loop, all the way up until I get to the end of file, from which I will break out of the loop. So let's go down to the bottom of the loop again. And here, if I do show the house, if that's equal to Y, then we print the house image. I put the grabber there in a heading, an H3, to make that a little bolder than just the information about the house, the beds, the price, etc., and the description down here. Since I concatenated everything into the description and I put it in a paragraph, it displays properly. I added a couple of breaks after the paragraph, so we'd have a little separation on our forms. All right, let's go back to the main page. If we look at the main page, the display realtors function is down at the end of the program. I didn't quite show you that, but it's standard. Get the root, and here I'm looking at the realtors directory under the root. And I pretty much just get the information, print out the image. Now, to get the name, I took the file that came back, the JPEG images of the realtors, and then I strip off the .jpeg. I make it an empty string, put it into this variable, and then I use a function that I didn't show you before, but I'll show you now. It's called UC first. It makes the first letter capitalized. Now you could have done this with a substring command as well. You could have pulled off everything after the first character, just made the first character capitalized, and then put it in the realtor name. This is just a little bit of a shortcut. And then I print the realtor name right below the image. So in the common functions area, let me move that to the right, and I'll show you the guest form calculator first, actually. This is what you had before. This is the first name, last name, what the contact information is, and etc. You've done this before, but the thing that I added here is in a program that's called, which is Assignment for Add to Guestbook PHP. In that program, let's find it, it's over here, I have added this validate entries information. This is what wasn't here before in your last file. So I'm including something called Assignment for Common Functions. And I really only have one function in there called the do validation. I pass the information and I receive the return message back. You've seen this exact kind of thing done in an earlier exercise, so you can go back and review that if you want to see how it works. I'll show you the function briefly here, and it's just simply looking for empty on the first name, last name, and on this. But the city, I'm looking to see where it's a hyphen, because that's what I set the select list to be by default until the user made a choice. All right, so we're almost done. This is the mortgage calculator. It's the same thing as before. I didn't really change anything other than make the logo go back to Assignment 4. That's pretty much it, I think, is all I did. And I changed the name to Assignment 4 Mortgage just to get everything to kind of go together as we move on into the next assignments. We're going to move into learning about databases, and then we'll start bringing this application into a database. That ends my description of how I solved Assignment 4.